Welcome back, everybody, to the Retro Blood. As we finish up this May 2025, talking all about James Kline's picks, that's me, of 1980s blood movies, or movies with blood in the titles. Mm-hmm. And boy, have we done a full array of some weird shit on this last month. We started off with the good old Blood Beach.
Yep.
Talking the good old John Saxon. Talking some sand dune creatures. Then we went to Darth Vader's lair of white women pussies. Talking Blood Tide and seeing some sort of Egypt Greek cock. Alright, which is actually one of my favorite episodes we've ever done.
Yeah, that was a really good show.
And then, of course, last week we talked about the horrible Blood Lake, which we're still trying to figure out the plot. And I've never seen so many kids sit down and sit up and sit down and stand up in my life, and it was boring. But we are finishing off this month with our next one. If y'all like comedy gore, if y'all like ancient creatures having or cults trying to raise up an ancient creature, all right, and trying to have a big feast and party to get this creature to run the earth again. If you like two serial killer kids who have a diner, if y'all like slapstick comedy and fast-paced talking and blood and titties, and if y'all like Nazi wrestlers, this is the review for you, because the Retro Blood is finishing up this month with Blood Diner. James, Kline and J.H. Alison, what's happening, Alison? How was your experience at the, what is it called, the Toot Diner? Did I say that right? Tootman?
Sure. It was okay. We had a good trip this month, though. I really like the journey that you took us on with these blood movies. It was quite a journey.
Yeah, it was
quite the choices. Quite the choices.
Very, it's kind of a foray of different things that I like. It's kind of like you had everything here. You know what I mean? You had semi-serious Blood Beach of ripping off jaws. Then we had the great James Earl Jones being a fucking a wild island capture guy with some sort of Greek cock monster. You know what I mean? We had the good old Blood Lake. You know what I mean? With the lamest serial killer of them all. Or the best. Yep. Or the best in some people's terms. Jeff.
Or the best.
Remember, do not hate on the Blood Lake. All right?
Exactly.
And then we end up with the Blood Diner, which this one is like the okay, it's the genre that we've done before, which is the horror comedy. Which I had never been a big fan of the horror comedy. Like, you just make everything so ridiculous. It's kind of like when we did Pieces. You know what I mean? We've done Pieces before on here. Microwave Massacre. Like that style of horror movies. Chopping Mall. You know what I mean? That style of horror comedy stuff that's like, it's so over the top and all this shit is happening that it's like ridiculous.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think Pieces and Chopping Mall are intended to be horror comedies, though. Horror comedy is a very specific thing, I feel like. It's like a it's almost like a spoof of horror movies. Yeah. Kind of like when we did Saturday the 14th. The thing I hate about horror comedy is that horror comedies are usually very palatable. They're usually very easy for people to watch and to digest. Like, it's easier to watch something like, well, I don't know, this may not be a perfect example, but I mean, like, it's easier to watch a horror comedy because it's usually more toned down and ridiculous than watching something like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, people watch something like Blood Diner and just assume that that's what horror movies are.
I can see that.
Like, horror movies are stupid and ridiculous. And then that's why, like, that anybody that's making those retro style horror movies now, make them like Blood Diner. They make them all just these stupid, ridiculous, goofy movies when that's not what horror is supposed to be.
No. Well,
And yes, I will be that guy that will tell you what it's supposed to be, because we don't, because that is a problem. We don't, because like the whole thing like we have against like, I can't stand gatekeeping. There's not enough gatekeeping now. We need more fucking gatekeeping, because we need shit like, you know, like these goofy bullshit movies to not really be made. Somebody needs to to wash these people out. But yeah, I mean that's my problem with horror comedy in general. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it makes horror, which is something that I love, look goofy and silly and stupid.
yeah.
So that's usually my problem with it. But I mean, this movie was actually pretty good. I thought it was made really well.
Yeah.
For, you know,
For that style.
what it was. Yeah.
So, I can agree to disagree with you. You know what I mean? So I do agree that I do prefer the more serious tone horror movies. Now, they don't have to be like fucking, like some sort of, some crazy, like everything has to be over the top serious. Obviously, one of my favorite horror movies that we've done on here, that we did on our Halloween special, was Night of the Demons. And that's definitely like in the realm of semi-comedy, but it did have
true.
It did have like a little bit more of a serious tone to it, though, a little bit. It wasn't like just goofy. But I think there's like a fine balance.
I think there's a good movie.
I think there's a fine balance you can do. I think Evil Dead is probably the perfect example of a movie that is comedy, but it's not like supposed to be comedy, but it just ended up being funny. And that's what I think a lot of. I think a lot of horror movies, especially during this time in the 80s, I think they took a lot of inspiration from Evil Dead because of the cult-like following it got, because of the how it was shot, how it was made, how it was like it was funny, but it was also serious. And I think a lot of movies took that. And then there was, like you were saying, there was a subgenre of stuff that just made it, people just think like, oh, it's just all goofy. Just make everything goofy. All your stuff is goofy.
Yeah, I agree. And Evil Dead is as the example I knew you would use, because that's the example that just thwarts everything that I just said. Because and the audience knows how much I love Evil Dead. And Evil Dead is technically a horror comedy. Although the first one was not intended to be funny. It just was. And then Evil Dead 2 kind of capitalized on the funniness of Evil Dead 1. But it's still serious in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Well, like I said, there's different.
I mean, it's also just a good movie. Yes. There's also both just good movies, whereas a lot of horror comedies just aren't good movies in general.
Yeah, like I was saying, like what I agree on you. Like basically, there is comedy in horrors that they can be very good that we've done over here before. We've done the Evil Dead series. Obviously, we've done Night of the Demons. A lot of these Italian ones could be a little goofy at the times, but that is like a horror movie trying to be serious, but it just ended up kind of funny. And then sometimes they'll catch up on the humor, like Evil Dead did, and then add a little bit more humor to it. But this style that we're going to talk about, Blood Diner, is everything has to be like tongue-in-cheek, I would say. It has to be very tongue-in-cheek and it has to be very over the top. So a lot of times when you're watching, films like, even like we were saying, Evil Dead, Night of the Demons and stuff, there'll be points in the movie that will be a little bit more serious tone. All right. But then in this one, the serious tones, they're still trying to make it into jokes. Okay. So it's just been like, it's just a style of film that's still being done today. There's a lot of like independent horror filmmakers. They will probably start off with more of a Blood Diner style movie than they will like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know what I mean? Or more like a Halloween. They'll try to do more of like the comedy style horror and put that out there compared to doing more serious. So, Blood Diner is kind of like a big subgenre of big horror fans really do like this style of horror movie. Now, is it me and yours taste? Maybe not so much, but it does have its place, and I think it is, a pretty copied movie when it comes to like the style of how Blood Diner is filmed and made.
Yeah, true. And Blood Diner was, I believe, intended to be kind of a sequel to Blood Feast.
Yeah.
Which Blood Feast is not a comedy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's silly in the way that it was executed in some ways, but I mean, we can talk about that I'm sure later. But that was such a revolutionary movie for its time, anyway. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I agree with what you just said. Like, I agree with that. Like, I feel like horror comedy when it's done right is good, but it's so often not done right.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's just what I would say.
And you know, the another thing Blood Diner does that's pretty well known and stuff is the excessive gore and body parts gore. Okay.
Yes.
Which is, you know, obviously it's a big thing now because of the Terrifier series, you know, where it's over the top gore, over the top like killings, just over the top everything, you know. And Blood Diner is definitely one of those movies that does have its over the top killing scenes or excessive killing scenes, but not the killing scenes are not like looked at like seriously, you know what I mean? They're a little bit more like on the tongue-in-cheek side, I would say. So, but everybody, of course we will break it down for you all over here, but like we do on every Retro Blood, let's get into what was happening in the world of the pro wrestling and the metal music during the release date of this Blood Diner. The reason we do this is because me and Alison are kind of like Mikey and George a little bit. We are trying to find different ingredients to make this podcast the reason that what was her name, Sheila, all right, was coming, yeah, SHEETAR was coming back to life. Me and Alison are gonna make sure that happens. We're gonna make sure SHEETAR stays in power, all right, by talking about metal and pro wrestling.
Yes.
All right, so I'll go first because
Always.
I think this is pretty fun. So during this time, this movie came out. It had a very limit release in theaters. So it was only in theaters for maybe like a week or two, and then it went straight to like VHS after this. But the release was July 10th, 1987. All right. And a fun thing that was going on around the world of pro wrestling around July of 1987 was one of the things that me and Alison have talked about before on this show, but it's also one of our favorite events, and that would be the Great American Bash Tour. It's going on around this time.
Ooh, yes.
So, you know, if y'all are new listeners or you haven't heard our stuff before, so the Great American Bash Tour is a lot different than how they do the Great American Bash today. So the Great American Bash today is just a one event. Usually now it's just done with NXT. NXT still does the Great American Bash. But how it was back in the day when it first started, it was actually like a tour. So they would start off more mainly around like the Carolinas and a little bit of Virginia. Yeah. All right? But they did go to Pittsburgh and stuff like that, you know, around the tours too. But it would be like almost like a 10-day tour. And they would just do like different style matches up every night. It's crazy.
Okay.
So this particular Great American Bash Tour that came out on the day that this movie came out in theaters was July 10th, 1987. And they were in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All right. At the Pittsburgh Civic Center. Okay. And what is noticeable about this one is this one actually had a 8-man tag team steel cage match. Okay, but what was significant of going on in this tour at the time is this is when they would have their first couple of war game matches that would happen.
Okay. All right.
So I believe on July 4th they actually had the big one of the most famous war game matches around this time, and then they would actually have a second war games match coming up pretty soon. I believe it was actually after this event on July 10th. I believe it was night 10. Let me look this up over here. Nope, it wasn't night 10. It was probably like 9/11 or something like that. They would go back to Orlando and they would do another war games match. And the big circle of competitors at this time, it would be Dusty Rhodes' team of the Road Warriors and Nikita Koloff, and they'd be fighting the Four Horsemen faction of Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, and Tully Blanchard. Okay, so a lot of those teams would be in the War Games matches, plus they would be in 8 or 6-man tags around this time. Okay, so on the day that this movie came out, the big main event was the Road Warriors, like I was saying, Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff. They would face the Four Horsemen in a tag team steel cage match, and of course the Dusty Rhodes team won at this time. But this is like a full card they had over here, and they would go on for like, you know, like the whole tour, almost throughout the whole of July, just doing like different events each night. It's pretty interesting how they do that nowadays.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to ask you a question about this
right.
and see what your opinion is. So, okay, so give me the lineup of the steel cage match again. It was Dusty and the Road Warriors against who?
So it was the Dusty's team, Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, and the Road Warriors versus the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that sounds like an amazing match to me. Mm-hmm. Seeing those 8 guys in a match together in a cage. Why do you think that nothing like that happens today? Now, I'm not saying it never does, but you always have like 2 top guys on each team and then 2 undercarders that are on it. Do they just not build enough big stars anymore like they did at the time? Or are there just too many big stars and none of them actually elevate to the level that the popularity that the Road Warriors and Nikita and Dusty had and the Four Horsemen? I feel like the closest thing we get to that is AEW's Anarchy in the Arena.
Yeah.
Which coincidentally is on Double or Nothing tonight, if you guys are watching wrestling tonight.
On tonight, brother.
But I don't know if I would consider everybody in that as a top star. I guess they are in AEW.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, why can't WWE do? I mean, the closest thing they did was the War Games match with Bloodline versus Bloodline. But I can't think of any other time when they've had 8 guys that were big enough to have that kind of star power. Or do I just look back on it as with kid eyes and think that, oh, well, that was amazing to see, and maybe people didn't think it was as big a deal at the time as it was? I mean, what do you think?
So it kind of depends. The problem with the WWE now is they usually brand their stuff out. So if we're gonna have our top 4, or let's say we're doing an 8-man, right? If we're doing like an 8-man steel cage tag team match, they're not gonna have it on a random, Great American Bash show or whatever. They're gonna save that for like Survivor Series. They're gonna save that for some sort of big event. And it's going to be a 1-match series, okay? The difference between right now of this tour, Great American Bash tour, they were basically doing that whole group of people, those 8 men. They were doing a combined of them every night in different ways. So even the night before, okay, that I was reading over here on this tour, it was July 9th. They were in the Cincinnati, Ohio, and they basically did the same match. The Road Warriors, same team. Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff defeated the Four Horsemen in an 8-man steel cage match. So they did that night, and they did it the next night. Now, the difference between nowadays and then is obviously this time is they wrestling was highly on shows, like arena shows. That's where you got your money. Right. That's where you got your ticket sales. That's where you got your stuff.
Yeah.
You did get a little bit off TV, of course, and I don't think they were having pay-per-view around this time, but I don't think they did like a lot of pay-per-views for like Crockett, maybe here and there. Like they only do like big shows.
Pay-per-view is uncommon.
Yes.
Pay-per-view is definitely uncommon.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, like the TV was made so people would buy tickets to the shows.
Exactly.
It was an advertisement for the shows.
Exactly. That's what Saturday Night Crockett was for. Okay, for people to go to the shows. Now, WWE now is all about branding. So if we did like an 8-man steel cage match, that would either be on some sort of like Raw or SmackDown super special where we need to get a bunch of viewers to please our demographic numbers, or we'd do it on a highly big show like Survivor Series or a SummerSlam or some big thing like that. It would just be one match, one night. Compared to this guy, they were doing this match every single night to get butts in the seats of every single town.
Well,
so it's just different.
Right. Well, it's a different time. Nobody's going to do an 8-man steel cage match 2 nights in a row.
But the star power, you're right. I mean, if you look at Survivor Series last year, you had the Bloodline versus the New Bloodline. All those members, besides maybe a few, they're all pretty big stars. You know what I mean? You got like Roman's a big star, Sammy's a big star, Jay's a big star. You know what I mean? CM Punk's a big star. Bronson Reed's becoming a big star. So WWE does do that. They can match everybody together. All right. But would be really interesting. All right. If they took all those guys, let's say we took the Bloodline or like Roman Reigns, Punk, Sammy, and Jay. And they were facing like, I don't know, like Seth, Bronson, and then just some other guy. And we'd take those 4, right? But we would have them face each other, all right, for a whole month or 2, back to back. That's what basically was going on during Crockett around this time. They would fight each
but
other.
they're not going to work that much, though.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even want to do house shows anymore.
Exactly.
But,
well, they don't really do house shows.
They don't really do house shows anymore. And I guess now Bronson Reed's going to be joining Paul Heyman's group, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, that was on the. That was on.
Spoilers if you haven't watched Saturday Night's Main Event from last night. I don't know where you've been, but yeah, that I guess he's going to be joining that group, yes. Which makes me excited that Paul Heyman's going to start a new Dangerous
faction, yes.
Alliance, maybe.
Which is nice. That's really cool.
Yeah,
so
that's really cool.
Another thing too, which is cool, they would also on July 11th they would go to the Greensboro Coliseum, which we've been to multiple times. And the main event of this one would be Lex Luger versus Nikita Koloff in a steel cage match for the United States Championship. So basically this whole tour was just a rotating of those 4 teams going after each other. But they also do, some nights they would do singles matches, sometimes they would do tags, sometimes they would do war games, and sometimes they would add people on. Like they would add Big Bubba later on and stuff like that too. So, what we're saying is basically in July of 1987, if you're a Crockett fan, this is a fun show to follow because it's like big match after big match, like almost every night. All right. So it's a pretty fun thing going on in the world of the pro wrestling. And we do have that, here and there and stuff like, wrestling doesn't stop even today. If you look at it this weekend, we had SmackDown on Friday. Okay. Then we had the Saturday night's main event last night. Okay. If you're a Japan fan, the Best of Super Juniors is going on right now. I believe. Oh yeah. If you're tomorrow night, we're gonna have obviously Double or Nothing, and we're gonna have NXT Battleground going on at the same time. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world of wrestling right now too. It's just different because nowadays we could see them all. Like if you had all the streaming services, if you had all the television stuff, the pay-per-views, you can watch all this stuff just from your living room compared to the 80s where you would just have to hear about it, maybe read about it on the newsletters and stuff about all the match results going through all these different towns and cities. So pretty crazy.
Or travel to the shows, which I don't think people did that as often as they did. Because, back then Crockett would do a huge show in Charlotte and do a huge show in Greensboro, which are only about an hour and a half apart. And now you would never be able to do anything like that now. But I feel like personally, like on what you were saying, like wrestling is going through a renaissance right now. Wrestling is better now than it has been since the 90s.
Yeah. And everybody's mixing together.
And it's great right now. So if you're not into wrestling, now is a good time to get into wrestling. I would say. Because
not only going to have pretty soon you're going to have a Worlds Collide show, which is going to be having AAA and WWE people. But you're also going to have a Dynamite that's going to come from Reno, Mexico, which would be really cool. And it's all you can watch it for free. If you have Peacock, you can watch it, or if you have, HBO Max, you can watch all the AEW stuff. So it's it is a really cool time for wrestling. It's a very, to me right now, it's a very accessible time of wrestling. You can get wrestling anywhere on any app. Hell, you can even go on Tubi, where we find all of our horror movies and get some wrestling on there. It might not be good wrestling, but it's there. Yeah. So
it's free. It's one of those things. It's free if you pay for it.
So,
but if you have HBO Max and you have Peacock or Netflix, you can watch the Raw.
Something I want to bring up too before we move on because it's going to be a big episode because we got to talk about the Blood Diner. This is like the tour of the War Games match, which War Games, for all you newer fans, that's where. Crockett is the one pretty much who designed and made War Games. Dusty Rhodes. Yeah,
Dusty Rhodes invented War Games.
Yes. Yeah. And he wanted to do basically War Games is basically it's the wrestling version of Mad Max. You know what I mean? He wanted to make it like that, like the kind of like a very big Coliseum Mad Max style, wrestling arena thing in there in the cage. Like Thunderdome.
Didn't he get the idea for it after seeing Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome?
Yep.
Yeah.
He got it from there. And which is really cool, which you can't find nowadays, which I do have, is the WWE a long time ago. I forgot when it was, probably sometime in like 2015 or 14. They released a DVD that has every single War Games match that was filmed.
Ooh, and you need to hold on to that.
And I have that. And they don't even have that on streaming right now. So, I try to pop that out every once in a while when I want to watch and wear War Games matches. But there is some great ones on there. You can find a lot of them on YouTube. I believe you can find the one that happened from this tour on YouTube as well, too. But everybody check it out. If you're watching our show and you're like, oh shit, maybe I should check out that wrestling stuff. This if you're into the 80s wrestling like we are, this time of 1987, this right here, this is peak Crockett. All these matches going on right now. This is the time. Like, this is when we would be super hyped. This tour right here is one of the greatest wrestling tours of Crockett that they ever done. So every time it comes up, I love talking about it. So,
of course, it's a great time. 86, 87 were great times for Crockett.
Of course, 2 years later.
Well, 2 years later, not so much. But
right now, that's the shit right now.
Yeah. The next year, they would start going down, and then, but we'll talk about that on the later day.
This is them spending money and fucking riding hard right now.
Yeah, buying planes and but yeah, as soon as you said like, oh, this show is in Pittsburgh, I'm like, oh yeah, that will start the start of the downfall when they were going up to Pennsylvania and going into other territories.
Yeah, so they were known.
They never should have done that.
Yeah, they were known for running mostly like our area, Carolinas, Atlanta, maybe a little bit of Florida here, maybe around that particular area is what they were known for. So. But Alison, what do we got going on in the metal music while we're on our way to the theaters, waiting to see some ritual titty magic? I think.
Sure.
Why did we need to raise her up again? Why did SHEETAR need to be there? Is that like Mantar's sister?
That's what I was thinking the whole time. Every time I saw SHEETAR, I was like, "Is this like Mantar's manager?" When Jim Cornette couldn't be there. SHEETAR. Anyway, we'll get into that. So, at first, I had trouble finding metal for this episode, and then I came across the perfect thing. The dates don't really line up as well as they could, but hopefully, we're not going to have another movie on this other day. And it's a band I don't think we've ever talked about before. So I want to talk about Napalm Death.
Yeah, still going.
Very, very famous metal band. Most metal fans have heard of them if they haven't listened to them. But on July the 1st, 1987, Napalm Death released their first studio album, which was called Scum. Now, the thing about this album is there's actually a lot to talk about in this album. But so basically, this band, this Napalm Death band, this version is not the version that is together today, and it's not the version that would become more popular a couple of years later, because they would replace their singer with this guy named Barney, who's in the band now, and that's what your famous, if quote unquote, Napalm Death would be. But Scum was recorded in completely two different times. So the first side, so there's a side A and a side B because we're in the 80s. So we have, records. So side A was recorded in August of 1986 and side B was recorded in May of 1987. And they both have completely different lineups. The only similarity is the drummer, they have the same drummer on both sides. So Napalm Death is kind of what I would consider a grindcore band. Like, they kind of invented grindcore to me. They're a British band, and grindcore, it's always been really hard for me to describe what grindcore is, but it's kind of like death metal and punk rock mixed together. Mm-hmm. But it's not thrash metal either, which is how you might describe Slayer. Slayer might be considered punk rock and heavy metal mixed together. But this album came out in 1987, which was like the very dawn of death metal too. So there wasn't a lot of real death metal. There wasn't too much death metal. I mean, there was a lot of death metal in 1986, but it wasn't like a big thing that we think of as we think of it today. It was like an underground thing. And grindcore kind of took like death metal and punk rock and put it together. So you don't really have the guitar solos, but you have more complicated guitar than you would have on a punk rock or a hardcore record. And the songs are really short instead of being more longer, like a death metal song would be. So, for example, as it's shortened this, so this album has 28 songs on it, and it's 33 minutes long.
Okay, there you go.
So
that's very grindcore-y.
Yes, very grindcore-y. So grindcore songs are typically shorter, very fast, very hard, I guess you would say. Metal, like not metal sound, like a machine sounding.
Yeah,
it's so hard to describe what grindcore is. I'm not really good at. I hate genres in music. So it's really bad. It's really hard for me to describe what
I would say
genres
it's like the fast pace of punk. Like, you know how punk songs can be pretty fast paced and stuff,
Right.
like very in your face, but it has more of the deeper vocals to it.
Yeah, like the growly, like death metal vocals.
Yeah.
But like I was saying before, like, so this album had two different lineups. So the first side had like the original, well, as far as I know, the original lineup of Napalm Death, which was Nicholas Bullen on bass and vocals, Mick Harris on drums, and then Justin Broderick on guitar. Now Justin Broderick would go on to be in a band called Godflesh, which is kind of like one of the first bands that mixed metal and industrial music together. And he's also in a band called Yesu. But so he became obviously more famous for being in Godflesh than he did for being in Napalm Death. And then side B has Mick Harris playing drums again, has Jim Whiteley, who's a kind of a famous English metal bass player. It has Lee Dorian on vocals, who would go on to be in Cathedral. He would become famous as the singer for Cathedral, which is a really good doom metal band from England. And it has Bill Steer on guitars, who would go on to be more famous for being the guitar player for Carcass. And he's in Carcass to this day still. So it also, like I was saying, also has a lot of really short songs. It also has the world's record for the world's shortest song with You Suffer, which was released as a single. It's 1 second long.
There you go. Not too much suffering,
so there's not a lot of suffering in that. But yes, it was released as a single at 1 second. Well, actually, technically the single version was 3 seconds long. So they had the extended version for the single. But when you listen to it as streaming now, you get to hear the original version, which is 1 second long. It's according to the Guinness Book of World Records. It is actually, oh crap, I lost it. Had an actual length on it.
Oh, okay.
To the millisecond. Okay, we're not that nerdy, so I'll need to look that up. But anyway, it is the world's shortest song, the shortest song ever recorded. I don't know if you can record a song shorter than 1 second. But yes, so they do have the world's record for that.
That's
the
fancy.
World's shortest song with You Suffer.
Do they play that live?
As a single. They do play it live. Yeah, they still play it to this day to play it live. But they pressed it on vinyl. So you bought a 7-inch record with You Suffer on one side and another song that was 3 seconds on the other. So I'm kind of imagining how you would feel if you bought this.
Yeah.
You know, you went to the store and you bought this, and it's and like I said, that version was 3 seconds long. But you listen to it and you have a 3 second record, and then turn it over and you have a 3 second record on the other side, and then that was your release. It's pretty amazing though. But yeah, Napalm Death. They're super famous. I would say.
Yeah,
I would say like
especially in the metal world. Yeah.
In the metal world, I would say most metal fans have heard of them, even if they don't listen to them. Have you listened to them much? Are you a fan at all?
Yeah. I've seen them live before. Napalm Death. They've been in. They actually still tour now to this day. It's too. I believe they went on tours with the Melvins and stuff. But yeah, I know. I believe didn't Napalm Death, weren't they on a TV show before or something like that? Like they were on something like that before. But I would say they're not on Cannibal Corpse level of like popularity. But I would say for like a long term metal fans, they know Napalm Death, and they're definitely pretty well respected. I'm not like an avid listener of them, but I have seen their show before, and it is pretty good for that style of metal music. But yeah. They I don't know if they've been on a TV show before or not. They may have. That may be something that is a thing. I do remember they were on. Their music was featured in that show Silicon Valley. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
But they, because like one of the characters, I'm trying to remember this, but like because I thought the show was really funny when it came out. But like one of the characters was using Bitcoin or something, or he had bought Bitcoin or something, and every time Bitcoin goes up or down, it play on his phone. The notification was You Suffer. So it would play that 1 second song like every time it would go up or down, which I thought was hilarious. They're super political band, so if you're not into that, you probably won't be into to them at all, and if certainly not if you're a Trump supporter. But they because they're definitely like a leftist type metal band, which is kind of unusual, I think, at the time, which I think they got from their punk rock days. Right. But yeah, Scum. I feel like people should listen to it. It is not easy to listen to. It sounds like a lot of it sounds like machines running, but it does have some really cool riffs in it, especially on the first side. And none of the songs are very long, so if you hate one, it'll be over in a minute and a half.
There you go. And of course, we'll play a little bit over here. Maybe not the minute and a half one, or maybe we will. We'll see.
No, we'll play "You Suffer," the 1 second song.
There you go. well, you know, yeah. Maybe it'll match up to some of the listeners on here who suffered watching Blood Diner.
Right? Yeah.
Which I thought the movie was okay for what it was. So
I didn't think it was terrible. Yeah. I didn't think it was terrible.
But let's get into it. Let's get into our big discussion of the Blood Diner. Let's talk about who booked this shit, brother.
Yeah, who booked this shit?
So this is this one is actually, the history behind this movie is, I would say it's like super fascinating, but some of it is pretty fascinating with some of the people who contribute to the movie. So the first one we're going to talk about is the director Jackie Kong, all right, which is a female director in the 80s, which is very rare. We don't really talk about a whole lot about female directors in the 1980s. You know what I mean? You know, unlike today where you have a bunch of them out there, you know, I can name a pretty good amount of few female horror, style directors out there. But, in the 80s is very just rare. That's just how it was. And which is cool about this Jackie Kong, she was known to like make like these fucking weird horror comedy style movies. Right? Like that's kind of like her style and stuff. She did the Being, she did Night Patrol, The Achievers, and of course her big hit was actually this one, Blood Diner. All right. And it was apparently in an article, she actually was getting a little bit more jobs after she made Blood Diner because, I wouldn't say this movie was like, super popular in 1987. Okay. Like it ain't going to be like, it's not going to be on the level of like some of the other 1987 movies we talked about, but it did help her get like more recognized. But the crazy thing is the people who were asking her, this is what she said, was they were shocked that she was like a female director. Like they didn't really hear about that stuff at the time.
Right. And like you were saying about that, like, no, you're right. It didn't do super well.
Yeah.
But it wasn't expected to either. I mean, it was definitely an underground movie. And critical reviews were mixed. So it didn't like get terrible reviews like a lot of cult movies like The Fog that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I mean, some people liked it and some people hated it. But I feel like it was a really famous movie, if I guess you will. It had a lot of notoriety, so it made her famous for directing this Blood Diner movie. So she did get a lot of directing jobs because she made this, which she should have. I agree. I mean, she did a great job directing this thing.
So a couple of little facts about the movie. The film was shot with a budget of about $3,300. All right.
Not a lot.
Yeah, and then the film was shot in 3 weeks. All right. I bet they used
3 whole weeks to make this.
I bet they fucking used half that budget just on like the body parts, like they had to like mold.
Oh, I guarantee it.
I
guarantee it. I mean, they had to have made. I mean, the body parts had to have cost a lot of the budget. I just can't believe it took 3 weeks to make this. But anyway, take her time.
So, apparently, upon the Blood Diner's release, it was banned in multiple provinces in Canada. I guess they don't like. I guess the Canadas, they don't like the SHEETARs around there. It's too hardcore for them.
Yeah, well, it's probably the cannibalism that kind of did it. But who knows?
Maybe. I guess.
They're kind of sensitive to the cannibalism in Canada.
So we're gonna talk a little bit at length about this guy because I think his history is pretty interesting. So Michael Sonyez, okay, he's the guy who wrote the movie, which we'll talk about him in a second because he actually has a pretty interesting background. He was originally intended to be the sequel to what you were saying before, Blood Feast. Okay.
Yes.
Hence the similar titles, Blood Diner, Blood Feast, and stuff. Apparently his screenplay was kind of just around, you know, in Hollywood. That's what they were saying. Years before, and then Jackie Kong, she's the one that got a hold of it, and then she's the one that wanted to make it into kind of her style, which would be like the horror comedy. All right.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about this this guy Michael, all right, Michael Sanjay, is he is actually best known to be the singer of a band called Haunted Garage. All right, which was a big time horror punk band in the 1980s, and their style was very similar to like the Creeps, you know, the Misfits, you know, Guar, you know, that type of stuff, because the music sounds very similar to like a Misfit style music, but
Right.
the stage show, he would bring a bunch of props and stuff on the stage show because they were like a very horror themed band, and that's why like they would be very similar to Guar. Like he would bring like, you know, blood on the stage and body parts and ghouls and goblins on the stage and stuff. And you'll like this, Alison. His name was Dukey Flyswatter.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. He went by the name Dukey Flyswatter, which I think is fantastic.
And I was kind of doing some research about this band, and they're pretty interesting. Like apparently they were like huge in like the California, Hollywood, you know, punk scene. Like they would even go on tour with the Cramps after they released one of their full length albums and stuff. And they would just rotate, you know, around like the punk scene around that time, and they would brush shoulders with like the Misfits and all of them around that time as well too. Like that was just kind of what they were kind of big. They're kind of like that revolutionary band because they would do their punk style, but they would also have a big stage show too, which a lot of bands weren't doing around that time.
And of course, especially in that size of band. Yeah,
exactly. That's size of band and stuff like that. So, and like they even, I think they even got credited for kind of like being that kind of shock band when they would have like their stage show. Like people were known to go there. Like if you're like in the punk and metal scene, you would know to go to Los Angeles to particularly see this band because they would sell out a lot of the nightclubs that they went to.
Yeah.
So.
And also he was kind of a Dukey Flyswatter. Dukey. He was older, you know, than most like punk rock people were. Like he was in his 30s when he was in this band. And so he kind of came from a time, I don't know if this reference will mean anything to you or the people, but I use the term monster kid. He was like one of those kids that grew up watching like the Universal monster movies, like from the 30s and the 40s, when he was a kid in the 60s. You know, the late 50s and 60s, because he was born like 1955 or something. So in the 60s, when he was growing up, he was watching these movies because they became kind of popular again, and into the 70s. And then they influenced him and a bunch of other people, like the guys in Guar and tons of other people to start these like monster bands.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them out there. We could do a whole show on the monster kids starting bands,
Yeah,
but he was one of those monster kids that like loved those movies and wanted to do something that was in the horror movie vein. But yeah, I mean, you'd asked me earlier if I was familiar with them. Not really. I mean, I've heard of this band, but I'm not really familiar with them. But they sound really cool.
Yeah,
and I really want to get into listening to them.
Yeah, I was listening to a couple of their songs, doing some research on this podcast, and it's like I said, it's very similar to like a very Misfit style, I guess. You know, with you got some of the good risk guitars in the background stuff, got a little bit of that rockabilly kind of going on, mixed in with the punk music, you know, very similar to what I'm wearing right now, Wednesday 13, when he was doing like his like drag queens of Frankenstein. I think they're called like that.
Oh yeah.
Where he's doing his old band on there.
That was some good stuff. Man. I remember when those albums came out. This Frankenstein drag queen album.
Frankenstein's drag queen stuff. They're very similar to that style where it's very like pop. It has that punk in there, but also you had the horror theme on there as well too. And this Haunted Garage Band was like one of the originators of doing that, kind of mixing like the horror and like the punk at the same time. All right, and what's is cool about this, our boy Flyswatter, okay, is he not only was he in a cool like horror punk band, but he also like acted in a bunch of low budget B horror films too. Like he was in some stuff that we'll probably be doing later on in the show. He's in the cult classic Surfer Nazis Must Die.
Yep. Surf Nazis Must Die. He plays Mingala. He's also in The Tomb.
Yeah, The Tomb. Sorority Babes and Slimeball Bolorama. The one I definitely want to do one time is Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, which has our girl Quiglia in there. And
I have gonna say I have a feeling when we do horror comedy month 2, we're gonna do all those movies again.
Yep. And he also helped. Apparently, Haunted Garage contributed to several like scores too for the soundtrack for the film Nightmare Sisters as well too. All right. So he's around there in the scene. Like he was pretty big into the, the scene around that time. So it's pretty cool to see like this kind of like underground band like contribute a lot to horror. And this guy actually, he wrote a couple horror stuff and he acted in a lot of these B-style horror films at this time. So pretty cool to see. And check him out too. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe after the Napalm Death song, I'll play some Haunted Garage for y'all too, because I think they
we'll play the we'll play the 1 second Napalm Death song and then play Haunted Garage for you. Yeah. So perfect. So unfortunately, I don't believe that Dukey is still alive. I think he did pass away. Let me see. I didn't think so.
Yes.
Do you have a death? Him dying?
Let me see. Hold on.
Did AI tell you that?
No.
I'm pretty sure he's still alive.
Okay, still alive. Okay, that might be somebody else. Just making sure. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see this guy who wrote this Blood Diner and stuff, and you can see his style. Like his music style does match up with this style of movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That very punk rock, shock. Just over the top, things, the cool thing about Blood Diner 2 and the way this guy's writing style is like nothing can be, it's like nothing is like, that can't be talked about. You know what I mean? Like nothing can be, it's not like, oh, we can't do that. That's too sensitive. This guy had like Nazi wrestlers. He had Nazi fucking guitar people on here. We had some witchery shit. People were saying all kind of curse words and all this shit on here. It's basically no holds barred when it comes to this movie and his writing style, because it's basically very punk rock. Like we don't give a fuck. We're going to talk about whatever might be cliche at the time. We're still going to talk about it and put it in our movie.
Yeah, I mean, people like, you can tell that he loves to make fun of Nazis.
Yeah.
Because of Jimmy Hitler and people like that in this movie. So like, it was a different time then. You used to could make fun of Nazis and be okay. That you can tell in his writing that he's definitely a little bit obsessed with making fun of Nazis, which I'm always for anyway. Yeah. But
it's just that kind of like that that very like rockabilly punk style. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That he puts in a lot of his music and a lot of his writing too. So I also want to talk about two of the our co-stars here, because I think they have pretty interesting backgrounds. The first one is going to be Rick Burks, who played Mikey in the film. All right. So apparently this is kind of like his big hit at the time. He played Mikey Tootman, and like basically he did some acting and he made an appearance in The Unachievers, okay? And he was also in the film Wicked Stepmother, okay?
Yeah.
And also, too, he was actually in a David Bowie music video, all right, called Day In and Day Out, okay?
Okay.
And then he was also in Brendan Russell's Piano in the Dark, okay? And he was basically just in a bunch of, like, music videos. But unfortunately, Burks, he actually died like 2 years after this movie got released, because he was in a underground band, okay, and apparently his friend or drummer at the time, they got into a bad car accident because the drummer was drunk and they hit a pole and they both died from that drunk accident. So pretty sad stuff for a guy who's, I thought he did a pretty good job in this movie. Like I wouldn't say he's Michael J. Fox or nothing, but he was all right, He was a normal 80s actor guy. I thought he had a pretty good look to him. You know what I mean? I thought his look looked pretty cool.
Yes.
And apparently he was
J. Fox.
Well, he wasn't no Michael J. Fox. There you go. He was all right.
Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So, but it's pretty
Didn't expect
tragic.
to
You
hear
know,
his
it's pretty
name, so.
tragic that this, it's pretty tragic to see like a young guy who's, getting some success. You know, he's getting jobs. He's in music videos. He's in movies and stuff. So
Yeah, he's working.
and he's doing a band and everything. So, yeah, it's pretty sad to hear that. Not even 2 years after this movie, it passed away. So that's pretty horrible. Another guy I want to talk about who actually has a very interesting background, and I did not expect this when I was reading this, was the guy who played George, the brother of Michael. Okay, This guy's name is Carl Crew, and this guy is actually pretty famous. Okay, like I wouldn't say he's super famous in like the horror movie industry, but he's super famous of having a nightclub. All right, the California Institute of Abnormal Arts. So basically, he had a whole nightclub for a long time that he would bring in oddball artists to there. And it's kind of like a nightclub made for oddball artists. So if you're kind of like in the realm of like different, like just like different style of artsy music and stuff, you would go to his venue and he would book you there. All right. So a couple things about his institute, which I thought was pretty funny. It would be like a mix between underground music artist and it'd be like performing arts and stuff, kind of like burlesque shows and freak shows. You know what I mean? He would do a lot of that. Plus, he would collect a lot of oddities. All right, and he would get a lot of his oddities because him and his friend used to be embalmers. So one of his jobs was he used to work in embalming, and then they got a love for like collecting oddities and stuff like that, and that's when they both created this club. At first, the club in the 80s got shut down when they got raided, but then it reopened back up in like the 90s, and they got more acts.
That's how you know. That's how you know you're doing the right thing in abnormal arts, is if your club gets raided. That's how you know you're on the right track.
So they had a couple. I don't know some of these artists. They might be familiar to people who like into that kind of music,
do like that kind of thing.
But they had like 8-Bit Weapon there, Art of Bleeding. They actually had the guy that we just talked about over here, Flyswatter. They had his Haunted Garage Band there. They actually did their reunion show at his center. Right? They did their first reunion show in 5 years in October of 2013. Of course, that was kind of a reunion for Dukey and for Carl because obviously they both worked on Blood Diner together.
Right.
They had the Radioactive Chicken Heads there, a comedy punk band who was regular performance at the CAI. Stolen Babies. You know what I mean? Like this is not really our style of music, but it's cool that there was like a cool underground club that this guy basically formed.
Right, and plus a lot of these bands are probably not bands we would have really heard of much because, like you said, it's not really our style. But it's also he also booked bands that couldn't get booked other places, because they were too weird and out there. So you maybe the Stolen Babies couldn't get booked at the Whiskey A Go Go, so they got booked at Carl's place.
And I would say his club in Hollywood, that's where his club was at in Hollywood, wasn't like a Whiskey Go Go, super famous, but it was pretty famous, and it was featured on a couple shows before. It was on Blind Date before. It was on Extreme Dating, before.
Okay.
I mean, he was also Carl was actually on an episode of the Discovery series called Oddities, and that's when they would go explore all of his oddities collection in his club. So it was getting, it's pretty, he was in the, so apparently, I guess in July 2020, the club's owner announced that they were closing the venue party due to COVID, basically, related stuff. So, and then of course, Carl also had a little bit of an acting career too, which is interesting, because he would go to, very, very short, but I thought this one was very interesting. So he did Blood Diner. Obviously, it's his first movie, like we talked about. Then he went on to be a little bit in the Unachievers, so he's following Jackie around. But then in 1993, he released, he was also the screenwriter and the producer for a Jeffrey Dahmer, The Secret Life documentary movie, which actually got a lot of controversy during the time. Okay, because this is only 1 year after they found out about Jeffrey Dahmer and they arrested him and everything. And this is even before Jeffrey Dahmer even got killed in prison. That Carl, he made a whole movie about him and actually played Jeffrey Dahmer himself. And during the time, this movie was getting very criticized because, all the victims and stuff, and people were just getting very, hard about the film and going on protest about the film. But then later on, as time progresses and stuff, the film actually became pretty well respected between a lot of documentary, and film watchers because of the style the film was and the accuracy of everything. Now, I haven't seen this one before. I have seen, obviously I saw the one that Ryan Murphy produced on Netflix. Yeah. But there was another one too, I believe it was made in 2000s. I forgot who the actor was. Oh man. Been a while, but that one was pretty good. But I never seen his before, and his is supposed to be the first one, the first ever live action documentary stuff of Jeffrey Dahmer on there. So
because like you said, it was only a year later. Yeah, like they went into production on that movie like a year later. When I saw Blood Diner, I recognized him from the Jeffrey Dahmer movie.
Okay, so you've seen it before,
which I saw it when it was new. Yeah. So I saw it 30 years ago. But yeah, it was pretty. I remember that movie being pretty. Maybe not shocking. Well, shocking, yeah. It was basically, it was pretty shocking at the time because I wouldn't say that it glamorized Jeffrey Dahmer, but it kind of did in a way.
Gotcha.
So it kind of made it more of like a, this serial killer story into more of like a horror movie type thing. But yeah, and I think that it was pretty accurate based on what they knew at the time.
Yeah.
As far as what Dahmer had done. But I mean, I don't know if you remember that or how old you even were at that time, but like the Dahmer thing was pretty shocking to most people when it happened.
Yeah.
Because that was the first time that I remember, like really in my lifetime, something like that happening. Although that's definitely not true. I mean, we had the Night Stalker and we had all kinds of 1980s serial killers. Yeah. But but this was like, this would have been
the gruesome evidence.
This was something that really hit me. Yeah. And like how obvious it was, and like with him eating people or whatever he did, things like that. But yeah, I remember him. I remember Carl Crew I recognized him from being in the Jeffrey Dahmer movie actually when I saw those.
So, like I said, pretty fascinating background of the movie, just with the people involved, because I mean. You have, the director Jackie being a very rare female director who directed like these wild horror comedy films that are so over the top, getting banned in countries director. You have the writer who's in this Haunted Garage, pretty popular underground hardcore punk horror band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you have this Carl guy who created his own venue of oddities and special attractions. The cast on here is super cool to me. You know what I mean? Like I like the whole production and the cast are on here just of the things they've done, And then they did Blood Diner, which is a very interesting movie, which we're about to talk about right now.
Finally, we're getting there. Yeah.
We have finally got to the time. I say let's get into it. I told you this history was going to be pretty big. But
yes,
let's get into the full review of the Blood Diner.
The Blood Diner.
Let's do it.
Hello, fellow food lovers. I'm Phil Mignon, world-famous gourmet. In my travels, I've sampled some of the most exquisite foods the world has to offer. That's why they've asked me to tell you all about a charming new eatery located right downtown. As you can see, the atmosphere is lovely. But, of course, the finest attribute of this quaint cafe is the marvelous cuisine.
By the way, what is the special ingredient in the Tuesday surprise?
Well, if I told you that, it wouldn't be a surprise anymore, would it?
They're, mouth-watering specialties. Will have you, as they say, licking your lips. Only the freshest natural ingredients are selected.
The first ingredients we need are 2 stomachs from a couple of tramps.
For use in their carefully guarded recipes.
I'd give my right arm for that secret recipe.
Yes, the chef puts a bit of himself into every succulent dish. Oh, and he's always pleased to serve you to your friends. Shouldn't that be serve you and your friends? No. Your gracious hostess will direct you to your table, where you will dine as if there's no tomorrow. So, breeze on down and don't let anything stand in your way. This Epicurean haven is called Blood Diner.
You got that right, homo.
So, this is Phil Mignon, saying bon appetit. Oh, Mommy.
The Blood Diner. First they greet you, then they eat you. No one under 17 admitted.
All right, so we start off with a warning. All right. Now, this ain't like no Texas Chainsaw Massacre warning or nothing like that, but we get a warning that it's going to have body parts flying, cannibalistic creatures, and all kinds of stuff going on. And it's warning us that this might be too intense for the audiences out there. I'm seeing all this.
Well,
but
they're not wrong.
My favorite part about the warning was when they were talking about, like, yes, this movie may contain cannibalistic rituals and body parts empowerment, but we have seasoned professionals doing all this. How do you
professional cannibals?
How do you become a seasoned professional cannibal eater there, Alison? How does that happen?
Man, it's years of practice.
Yes.
Really. I mean, you got to put in the time.
Is that kind of like is that like a Pitmaster show we should do of different cannibals? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's essentially how you do it. You got to put in the time and become the perfect cannibal pitmaster. And I think that would be the perfect reality show. Like, we need to pitch that to somebody.
Just imagine.
Maybe not in the United States.
Yeah,
that may not go over so well. But, in some other country, I'm sure we could sell a cannibalistic pitmaster show.
Yeah. I know, that's hilarious. So now we're at a house. All right. It's all this is like, the filming style of this is very Microwave Massacre. You know what I mean? It's very like, everything is tongue in cheek. Everything, like every little thing.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
So we're at a house. All these toys are there. We see these two kids on there. And now the mom has to leave because she forgot her tampons. All right. Mm. So we hear on the radio that we have an escaped killer on the loose who invaded the cops. And he has a meat cleaver in one hand and has his genitals in the other. How does that work out?
Dude, like, as soon as I heard that, I knew this was going to be hilarious. Like, I just died laughing. Like, it's a meat cleaver in one hand and his genitals in the other.
Like I said, very tongue-in-cheek. The whole movie is pretty much like this. Like, those lines are like all over this movie. It's and the problem is with this style of movie, for me, I try to take as much notes as I can, and it's hard to get every single line. Okay, but I got the ones that at least crack me up. So we'll do those. So now the crazy man breaks into where the kids are at. Okay, and we find out that this is actually the two kids' uncle. All right, and I keep fucking up his name. I thought they said landlord, but it's not the landlord. It's Uncle Anwar Newton.
Yeah.
All right.
And
So we'll just call him Anwar. Or Uncle.
Anwar,
If you hear Uncle
Anwar.
Yeah, if you hear Uncle or Anwar, that's the main killer dude that we're going to be talking about. Okay? So he comes in there, scares the kid for a little bit, but then we find out there's his uncle, and this is when we have a young Mikey and a young George. Okay? And the uncles talk about, hey, it's been a while. Are you guys been studying up on your books? They have a book over there about, like, it looks like a witchcraft book or something. It's basically the book of SHEETAR. Okay, that's the book that they've been reading from a young age. Michael, or Mikey, whatever we want to call him, he's actually been studying his, trying to hypnotize people, while George has been studying his cooking lessons. All right?
Right.
And then now Uncle Antar gives him the necklaces from their ancient cult. All right? And he gives him the necklaces. And the cops has finally found him. And this is when he goes outside and he gets shot. And the kids watch him get shot. Okay? Then Mikey stares at the clock, and the clock keeps spinning, and now it's 20 years after this. So the kids, I guess, what, they're 26 or 27? Because they look about 6 or 7.
So, yeah.
Took them 26 or 27 to rob a grave of their uncle, which they're doing right now.
Well, you got to work up to that.
It's true. You can't do it when you're 18, man.
No,
you gotta wait.
right.
You gotta wait till you're almost 30.
Yeah, I mean, grave robbing is not as easy as it sounds.
Exactly.
I mean, don't ask me how I know that. I'm just saying, in general, grave robbing is not just something you can just wake up one day and do. You got to work up to that. You got to work up to that. You got to work up to that.
So basically, the task that the uncle has put onto them since they were a child was to resurrect the ancient Lemurian goddess SHEETAR. All right.
Yeah. Right.
So basically, they dig up their uncle's grave by killing some goofy cop. Like they smashed the cop, and then his eyes popped out. It's like, very goofy stuff. Okay. Yeah. Something like you would see in like Ghostbusters or something. And then they grab up the grave. They like chop. Tell me how this works, Alison. So they took the grave and they chopped up the dead 20-year remains of their uncle, and they took out his brain, but his brain and his brain and eyes are fine. So that didn't decay at all.
Apparently not.
Maybe when you have secret mystical cult powers, your brain still stays in.
Maybe. I'm pretty sure, or I'm not sure at all that this movie had any kind of scientific relevance, regardless of what it says at the beginning of this movie. Okay. I'm not sure there was a lot of science in this. But I did want to ask you, so they're resurrecting SHEETAR.
Yeah, SHEETAR.
Who they say is a Lemurian goddess.
Yes.
Like, I think it's kind of cool that they use the idea of Lemuria in this. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Lemuria it's kind of like a lost continent that was theorized in the 1800s. Only nerds like me would know this, but it's kind of like Atlantis. So it was like, it's supposed to be like a continent that existed. It was proposed that what they were trying to do is they were trying to explain why certain fossils they were found in certain parts of the world, but not in other parts. And then they were basically, they proposed that there was this continent that had an ancient human civilization on it, and it was called Lemuria. And there were these people that lived on it, and then the continent sunk, and all the people were killed. Kind of like the story of Atlantis, like I was saying. So that's where they got this, and it was completely disproved, of course, when like people started getting more into science. But occultists kind of took it as like a thing that might have really existed. So anyway, so that's where we get Lemuria.
Did the people of Lumeria, did they have Jupiter 1980s electric power?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's cool. Just wondering.
But it couldn't save them from their continent sinking.
So, to my surprise, they got their uncle's head and eyes in a moving water jar, and the uncle is now talking the whole fucking time. Okay?
Yeah. I may have missed this. Do they explain how he's able to talk through the water and the jar?
Well, it's because of his SHEETAR Jupiter power.
Okay, very good.
From Leetar.
Fair enough.
I don't fucking know. Why are you asking me? I just watched the fucking thing. I didn't write it. Go ask your boy Nutty Water, whatever the hell he's called. We just talked about
Dukey Flyswatter, how he's able to talk. I bet he would have an answer too. I bet if we met him at a convention,
bro, I bet
how is he able to talk, and he would just come up with something off the top of his head.
I bet that dude is fucking awesome to hang out with. I
bet he is.
That Dukey guy.
I bet he is.
Because we would go there and just be super nerds about Blood Diner. He's like, I like these guys.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, they have this is when the uncle explains to us what the boys' tasks are, which we just explained to you all, of resurrecting SHEETAR. Okay. So then this is when we meet our detectives for the whole movie. Okay. We have the chief over there, and we have Matt. He's going to be our main detective guy. And at this point of the movie, I could not tell, Alison, I don't know if you could either, was this movie dubbed? Like, I thought it was in a different language, and they dubbed over, like, some people. Like, I felt like this is, like, I wouldn't say it's an Italian movie, but it felt like it was, like, kind of like in that realm of Italian movies where, like, people were speaking, and they just dubbed everything over. But I think that's how they actually were speaking. It's very interesting. Like, they were, like, speaking dubbed. Like, at least the Matt character was. Like, he sounded like he was dubbed throughout the whole movie.
Maybe. I mean, I think that I always thought that the lines that were delivered sounded weird.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they went in and re-recorded like the voices to make them sound better, and then that's just what they got.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I thought all the voices in it sounded really odd.
Yeah. And then the chief guy was Miller. He was like, he was a character. All right. So now the Chief Miller, he thinks that there's some sort of big event going down because of he just feels something in the air is going down. So he has hired a second detective to help Matt out. Okay. And, Matt was they were just talking about the dead body, a cop that they found around the grave that was open. All right. And we're going to find out that Matt's partner is going to be Jackson from New York. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have the uncle in a jar. Okay. He gives the Michael and George the task of basically what they need to do to resurrect SHEETAR is they need to collect body parts for the SHEETAR. Plus, they need to get collect a lot of organs. Okay. But
yes,
okay. Let me see if I got this correct. So, in order to resurrect the SHEETAR monster, they have to collect. They have to have one virgin. Not everybody can be a virgin, but they need one virgin.
Only one. They only need one. Yeah.
That the virgin is for SHEETAR. That's her first meal. Her meal can only be one virgin. Okay.
Right.
But to resurrect SHEETAR, they need multiple body parts, and they need to bring on a feast. And they got to make sure that everybody who's feasting on them has to be vegetarian.
Yes, which I thought was really strange.
Okay.
I thought this whole thing was really strange. The fact that it was centered around a vegetarian restaurant,
Yes.
I thought was really weird.
Even though at the first scene we see is George smashing some hamburgers and watching wrestling, which was the AWA of all things he was watching.
Right. Yeah.
Old school.
Yeah, I was trying to look that up. It was AWA. But it was but I mean, that's like
it was it's supposed to be vegan.
Way, right?
It's supposed to be vegan burgers.
Okay. So
because it's funny.
But they have a vegetarian restaurant.
You know how
they have to they have to kill people and eat them too.
So you all have to remember, also too, you all have to remember this is 1980s. Everybody in the 80s thought vegans were funny.
Yes. So so being a vegetarian in the 80s would have been a really weird thing. Yeah. So this is not like trendy and popular like it is now.
Exactly. Nowadays we can get vegan burgers at fucking Burger King. Back in the day, I didn't know what a vegan burger was until it almost even came to Burger King. Like, I've always ate meat and stuff. I knew about vegetarian meals. The worst vegetarian meal I ever had was fucking... Have you ever had vegetable lasagna? That shit is horrendous, brother. I almost puked eating that fucking shit.
Wow, okay. All right. I mean, I would think that...
But I've had a couple Impossible burgers and shit like that. Some of them are pretty good. All right? Shout out to
I think
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think Impossible is pretty good for what If you're gonna eat not eat meat, then I think Impossible is not bad at all. Like I had some of the Impossible chicken nuggets, and I really couldn't tell much difference between Now, to be honest with you though, meat is kind of overrated in a lot of ways. Like meat, if you don't cook it with anything, kind of just doesn't really taste like much. Like if you cook unseasoned chicken, it doesn't taste like anything really. So meat, people say they like meat, but what they really mean is they like stuff that's cooked with the meat. Yeah. With some exceptions, like steak has its own flavor, but you have to kind of cook anything with it. We kind of got off on a tangent about vegetarian food, but anyway,
I can go on.
And neither one of us are vegetarians, so it's weird, right?
I did a whole month where I just ate only vegetarian, and I don't know, I just missed the meat. But there was some good ones I found, like some hamburger style vegetarian burgers that were actually pretty good. Even today, I'll go out to some restaurants, even around where we live at, that have pretty good vegetarian burgers. Like you could tell like a little bit of the difference, but they still taste pretty good. So,
yeah, I agree.
So they're making some burgers. George is smashing the burgers with his hand while watching it. So now we can see that the kids, they basically own their own diner. Mike is kind of like more of the charmer, while George is kind of like the weirdo who just cooks the shit in the back. Okay. The uncle wants to see a better view because like I said, the uncle is the one who decides who the victims are to create this feast. All right. So what they have to do is they have to create this feast that has to happen in 5 billion years or something like that. And the feast is going to help resurrect the SHEETAR creature. Okay, so now the whole movie basically is them collecting the ingredients for this big feast going on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we basically see Mike is putting in ingredients in his vegetable burgers, and his ingredients is human flesh. So basically, Mikey is the original Hannibal.
Yes, essentially, yes.
Feeding everybody human meat and pretending it's something different, but he just doesn't.
Right.
He doesn't do it as classy as Hannibal does it. Okay.
No. Hannibal's way classier than this.
So we meet one of our I guess he would be a foodie reviewer in 1980s. Our boy Vitamin C. And our boy Vitamin C goes around and he goes to different vegetarian burger spots and he eats the burgers and he reviews them. So we have 1987, we have a fucking foodie. Like this guy, now nowadays he'd be on TikTok and Instagram and shit, but back in the day, like what did he just do? Write it in the magazine? I guess.
I guess so, yeah. Vitamin C was my favorite character from this movie.
You liked him the best. He would just say,
I mean,
so happy.
For as small a part as he had, I really loved Vitamin C. Or you can just call him Vitamin when you get to know him.
Yeah. So like he is all like, man, this is the best vegan burger I've ever had, and I have a shit ton. All right, and I love this stuff. All right, and then Mike's like, oh sweet, thanks. All right, and then we go on. Now we meet this girl crew. All right, and these girls are talking about what's wrong with being nude and doing cheerleading stuff. We're gonna get paid pretty good doing this, and all the girls want to do it, but Connie, she basically can't do it. She's the only one in this group that's not gonna do the naked cheerleading video shoot. Okay.
Yeah, so I was confused by this at first because when I first saw this, because they're sitting in the diner or a different diner, talking about this, and I'm like, for one thing, I don't believe any of these girls are actually in high school, but then it turns out they're just doing it like as for money or whatever. That they're dressing up as cheerleaders for money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought this scene was hilarious where they're talking about how the girl was talking about all the things that she's tried and then other people copy her or whatever. Like, and then now they're going to be like, they're going to be nude cheerleaders doing aerobics or whatever.
Yeah.
That was great.
Doing that.
But Connie doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. She don't want to do that. And like, we can already tell that this is written by a dude, which I like.
Yes, of course.
So also too, when Connie and all this stuff, so basically Connie goes up to Mike, says she basically can't finish her food. Mike's like, oh, it's okay. What's going on with, with it? And she's just not feeling well. And he's like, well, I can make you feel well. I'm going to personally invite you to my glorious feast that I'm putting together. And then, of course, the Uncle Jar is like, I bet she's a virgin. All right. So basically, that's where they found their virgin. Their virgin is going to be Connie. All right. Well, she does have some history with the uncle, which we'll find out a little later. So now the girls from earlier, they're doing their topless cheerleading, which I was like, yeah, about 18 to 34 male. It's a good scene. It's a good scene. And boy, there's some bouncy ones on this one. I liked it. All right. So they're doing their stuff. And I guess this is like, I was thinking when I was watching this, is like, I bet you this was actually a thing in 1980s that people would buy like some topless cheerleading.
Oh, I guarantee it was.
Videos, you know what I mean? Like if there was some porn site, this would have been like a top of the charts porn site right here. Okay, in the 80s, you know what I mean? So they're doing all this stuff. Apparently, the whole crew of this topless cheerleading, they're also known to be vegan. Okay, so we have a killer comes in with, I swear, a Ronald Reagan mask and starts shooting them all up.
No, he is wearing a Ronald Reagan
mask.
That's what I thought. And his wife, the other guy is wearing a Nancy Reagan mask, I believe.
Yes.
Or Margaret Thatcher. I couldn't figure out which one it was, but he's wearing a Ronald Reagan mask, which would become more famous later in Point Break.
Yeah,
where they wear the ex-president mask.
Point Break, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so he's wearing a Ronald Reagan mask, which I thought was hilarious.
So the girls also said before they got shot up, they said Connie basically couldn't come because of her dad. Her dad's a cop, which that will come in later. All right, so now the uncle said. He's basically, while Mike and George are cutting up these bodies for the body parts, the uncle said they need 8 tons of blood for the feast. Okay?
It's a lot of blood.
Yes. And then the rest of it, they're going to use the rest of the body parts or whatever, the ones that they're not leaving there, they're going to use for the patties tomorrow. So that's what they do. They basically, what they do is they feed vegetarians human meat. All right. And they collect blood and sample stuff for their big feast. That's the gimmick of the whole thing.
Right. So this is like that's the gimmick. That's the joke, right?
Yeah.
Is that the movie is essentially making fun of vegetarians in a way,
Kind of,
because vegetarians were funny in the 80s.
Well,
but the whole thing is like they're starting a vegetarian restaurant, but they actually serve
meat.
Not only meat, but like human meat in it. Yeah.
And the comedy part too is that all the vegetarians love the place. Because,
right, and they all love it. Yeah.
Because the joke was basically like, oh, okay, well, all vegetarians, they truly love meat. It's just like a fad going on at the time. All right.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the joke behind it. Okay. So he's cutting off some body parts and stuff, and he needs They need to cut the body parts properly because SHEETAR needs her body parts in great condition. Okay. So then we have the cops coming back there. They're taking photos and stuff. They're dropping body parts and everything. Matt makes a joke saying this is a do-it-yourself meat party. Chief Miller gets pissed off, so he punches him in the gut. All right.
Yeah.
And this is when Matt meets his partner. His partner is Jackson from New York. While basically Chief Miller is going over how disgusting this is, how nasty it is. These are a bunch of crazy cannibals and stuff. He thinks it's a crazy cannibal biker gang who's going after only vegetarians. While this is all happening, Matt is licking his lips and showing his tongue to Jackson for some flirting. You ever done that, Alison? You know what I mean? You find a hot piece of woman out there, and you're like, you know what? We're gonna do a little bit of that.
It's never successful.
You don't do that
for me.
You don't do that gimmick?
I try not to do that these days. I try not to do that gimmick these days. It just doesn't work.
I mean,
just doesn't work.
I tried it once or twice. It didn't really go that well. But for Matt, I guess that's his thing. That's what he does.
I guess it's his thing.
Okay. All right. So now we're back at the diner. Mike tells George to get he needs 2 specials because the diner is getting very popular now. Like there's a lot of people coming in because our boy Vitamin C, which I wish he would be on our show, bro. Vitamin C. He wrote such a great review of this place that now it's getting a lot of business. And now Vitamin C is going there every day to eat his veggie burgers. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he wants to know the secret ingredient because he wants to write it in his review. And Mike is like, I can't give you that. It's a secret. All right. And then we get a short promo video of a wrestler, supposedly maybe in the AWA, called Jimmy Hitler.
Little Jimmy Hitler.
Little Jimmy Hitler.
I thought this was fucking fantastic. I laughed my ass off.
It's funny
little Jimmy Hitler.
It's funny for a couple reasons. First of all, it's so ridiculous that we're doing some Hitler shit here in 1987. Right. And it's super funny because if you all know, you should know this by listening to our show. The foreign heel is a big thing in 1980s wrestling. And the only person to ever do a Hitler gimmick that I remembered was actually Kevin Von Erich's dad. What's his name?
Fritz?
Yeah, Fritz. Fritz did he did a German Nazi character in wrestling. That's the only one I know that the closest to a German Nazi character was Fritz. Before.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know if he was like, explicitly said he was a Nazi, but it was a German. He first started, he was Germans and people hated Germans because of World War II. Yeah. So that worked really well. But the little Jimmy Hitler. So I didn't actually ask this during the Who Booked This Shit, but I'm assuming that Dukey Flyswatter is a huge wrestling fan.
I would assume so. It seems like
he would have to be, right?
There was no. I couldn't find any written detail of if he was or not. But I would say yes because obviously if he's big into horror and stuff and he likes this style of horror, which is very niche. I'm pretty sure he would like the niche style of pro wrestling as well too.
And there's also no real plot reason that wrestling has to be in this movie.
No, exactly. Not
and
really.
There's a lot of wrestling in it for some reason.
Yeah, because they're like
which was shocking to me.
Yeah, so basically the character of George is a big wrestling fan. So while he's cooking his stuff, he would watch pro wrestling. And he's actually going to be in a wrestling match later on, which we'll find out about.
Yes.
Okay. But I actually thought the little Jimmy's Hitler promo was actually pretty good.
It was great.
At first, I was like, "There's no way this is a real wrestler." You know what I mean? Like I was gonna look him up and shit. Well, fucking
because I kind of wondered when I was watching this if this is where R-Truth got the little Jimmy character from.
Hilarious.
Because he always talks about little Jimmy. It'd be hilarious if you got it from Jimmy Hitler from Blood Diner.
So now Vitamin C actually said, "Hey, I'm a good wrestler too. Why don't me and you go at her, George?" All right, but Vitamin C wanted to do some arm wrestling. George wanted to do some pro wrestling. So he starts choking him out, and then Vitamin C spits up all of his burger all over everybody. Okay. So now Connie is upset outside. Mike goes to talk to her, and Mikey tells her, like, she's like, "Oh, I knew those girls that got shot up and stuff. I feel all upset." And Mikey tells her, "Don't worry about it. I won't let any trouble ever happen to you. Here, take this ancient ritual necklace, and this will protect you." And she's like, "Oh, I got 2 guardian angels and stuff." He's like, "Well, don't tell anybody. Don't tell your dad or tell anybody. This will be between you, me, and SHEETAR."
Yes.
All right. So I was like, "Come on."
You, me, and SHEETAR.
So now Vitamin C is back to eating. He's like, "Well, I spit it all up. I got to eat it all back now." All right.
Wow.
All right. And then now we get caught. Now we're back to the police. All right. Miller, Matt, and Jackson. And they're saying that all the victims at the nude aerobics were vegetarians. All right. And one of them said, "Yeah, we did an autopsy. They're all vegetarians, but one of them had some cat meat in there." All right.
Okay.
Funny. That's what it was.
Hilarious.
All right. So now the chief is convinced that it's a cannibalistic biker gang who's going to different veggie restaurants and killing them. All right. And then Matt's like,
I was gonna say that's not a bad theory, considering. But anyway, turns out not to be true.
But it's funny that Mark said, "Oh, I think it's the vegetarian. I think it's a bunch of vegetarian cooks who went insane." And Miller's like freaks out, saying, "No, it's a biker gang, basically." Okay. And then while this is happening, Mark lips his lips to the partner again. I think I was calling him Matt the whole time. It's actually Mark. My bad. You guys get it.
Right.
Matt, Mark. It's the police. It's the police guy who lips his licks. Okay?
Yes.
So now we have George and Mikey sewing up some bodies to make the SHEETAR portal. You know, kind of like the Bride of Frankenstein. So the uncle's now saying, "Kids, I don't want you all to screw up like me, because I was tasked to do this mission a long time ago, but I let my schlong do the talking for me." All right?
Yes.
All right. So now there's a photo. The uncle remembers the old days, which we actually got a bunch of weird flashback videos of the uncle, like, taking naked topless women and hitting them. I was like, this is random.
Well, yeah, it was really random, but
yeah,
not bad.
So basically, the uncle was going to do this ritual, which like basically what you had to do is you would have to kill a couple women, and you had to take the body parts and sew it up to make the SHEETAR vessel, and then you would save like the blood and the meat and everything for the feast. He was tasked with doing that, but he failed because he would, do bad things with his victims.
Right.
So now the boys are tasked. I thought they said go to the gay bar, but it's actually just a club. Okay.
Yes.
And then Uncle now is flirting on the SHEETAR thing, wishes he could show the SHEETAR his schlong. Okay.
Great.
So now we are at Club Dread. Okay. We have Mikey and George. They look like some sort of Elvis looking dudes. Okay. They go up to the bouncer, and the bouncer tells them to hit the brakes and stuff, and then they take the bouncer, they throw him, and then the bouncer basically gets his head crushed in by a lowrider. Okay.
Yep.
So we get that Shake It song. Shake it off. Yeah, shake it off. Shake it off. And everybody's shaking it off, I guess. Mike tells George to be cool. They're looking for... They don't need a nice girl. They need the trashy ones. All right. So then they see 2 trashy girls. Okay. One of them's name is Peg. Peg's the blonder one with the tits. All right. And they go up to them. They start to lapse and everything. and they ask like, "Hey, what are y'all from and stuff? And we haven't seen you around this club before." It's like, "Oh, well, we've been very busy at our restaurant and stuff." He's like, "Oh, you guys own a restaurant, or are you in a band?" He's like, "Well, we're in a band, but our restaurant's keeping us busy while we're recording our record."
We do both.
Yeah, they do both. And he's like, "Oh, let's get out of this trashy spot. How about y'all come back to our restaurant, because we could have you big part of our big feast that hasn't been in for 5 billion years for SHEETAR." And the girls are like, "Oh, hell yeah, SHEETAR, let's go."
Let's go.
Got it.
What a great idea.
These 80s movies look like it's like the easiest thing. Just to like go into a bar and pick up some tricks, bro. It's just so easy, funny. Then. It's like a guy wrote this. It's weird.
That's almost as if a guy wrote this.
Right. So now, all right. So now we see Mark and Jackson. They go to Mr. Veggie's diner. Okay, which Mr. Veggie is actually Stan. That's his name. And Stan is saying that he doesn't really have any customers. The only customer he has is his doll that he does ventriloquy with. All right. And the doll tells everybody that the diner across the street or whatever is taking all the business because of their special recipe. Okay. And Stan really wants that special recipe. Also, too, Stan doesn't believe that it could be a biker gang that's killing the people. He just doesn't think a biker gang would go to like veggie restaurants like this at all. And he says he doesn't get any customers anymore, so he wouldn't even see a gang around here, even if they were doing it. Okay.
Yeah. So this is just weird, right? That he has a ventriloquist dummy.
Yes.
In his right. Then there's no like real explanation for it.
There is. It's comedy, brother.
Yeah. He's just weird. Like there's just
Well,
okay. Anyway, I just want to point that out.
Everything in this movie was made to be over the top,
right?
Or cliche over the top shit. That's what it was made for. Okay. So now Mike is kissing on that girl Peggy from the diner. All right. George and the other girl are just staring at them. Mike tells him, "Hey, go show her the back." The girl's ready. The other girl's like, "Yeah, George, show me the back," because she's ready to fuck. All right.
Yeah.
Mike is saying, "You taste so good, you could be a feast." All right. And the girl is all liking that. Peggy is. George is now kissing. Well, first the girl goes into the lair and she's like, "Man, you guys must have been high as fuck decorating this place." And then George starts kissing her and stuff. So now Mike is now putting on some sort of white sauce all over the Peggy girl. More titties and stuff. And then he's like, "Okay, I got to do the final ingredients." So he deep fries her head.
Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. Like where he just sticks her head into the deep fryer.
So then she gets away really though.
Cool, they did that too.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, this is pretty neat how they did that part. And then like it's weird because she gets out and her whole head is like basically looks like a big it kind of looks like a hush puppy. Her head does.
No.
And then Mike eventually knocks her head off with the golf club. It looks like. And then the other girl is now kissing up on George, right? And then the head flies by and she's like, "Oh, I gotta go check on Peggy." So George kind of just leaves. She goes and checks on Peggy. Peggy's getting her organs ripped out by Mike, so she starts freaking out. She runs into some dead bodies and everything, and she's trying to leave, but forgets her purse. Then her purse, all the stuff comes out of her purse, so she puts the stuff back into the purse. This part right here is probably making fun of like that, girl is in danger moment. How they're not forgetting their purse and stuff. And then the girl leaves, and then George comes out and move over Terrifier because George over here with one butcher knife cuts the girl right in half.
Yeah.
With one hand. We don't need to have him upside down with the salt. No. We just get George over here. He's powerful enough to cut somebody in half with a butcher knife.
Yeah, it was like Terrifier before Terrifier.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Put some respect on the Blood Diner.
Exactly.
All right. All right. So now we have a sign that I think it was in a different language. I couldn't tell which one. It says trespassers will be eaten. All right. I think it was in Italian or something. The language was. So they take the uncle tells them to take out the trash, like the body parts that they're not using. Apparently the cops find a necklace. I don't know who dropped this necklace. I didn't see it. I guess it was Mike's. It wasn't Mike's necklace because he gave it to Connie. I guess it was George's necklace. I guess he dropped that, and now the cops, Mark, and Jackson want to figure out what this necklace is about. Okay. So they take. I couldn't believe this part. So they take the necklace to some sort of archaeological girl. Okay.
Right.
And she is talking on miles per hour. I mean, I don't know how she talks so fast. I was like, they gave her like a fucking paragraph script, and she zipped by that fucking thing. I'll try to do it my best. So
very good. I was hoping you would.
She's talking about the story of SHEETAR, okay? Mm-hmm. And there's a ritual that happens a week before SHEETAR comes up. It's going to be a wild orgy. There's going to be drugs there. It's a great feast of blood, like a blood feast, okay?
Yes.
And, you know, she's saying like, you know, and then she said a bunch of other stuff about the cult and the ritual and stuff. They said, that, you know, that's what the cult believed and everything, and the practice hasn't been done, and she doesn't even know about any living cult members that are like that. So now Mark and Jackson now think, okay, maybe it's not a cannibal biker gang, maybe it's some sort of religious cult killer now. So they're turning their angle away from the killer biker gang to more of a cult doing this kind of stuff.
Right.
So now Uncle's back, all right? And he tells them to get a pot ready, all right? And we need that virgin by tomorrow, all right?
Well, so that might be tough.
The pot is for the feast, and the virgin is for SHEETAR.
SHEETAR, exactly.
So now they're giving out food at the restaurant, more, you know, human food at the veggie restaurant. Actually, I like this part of this movie, like this quick little scene here. They had the Tutman Cafe shirt, which they promoted in the movie, and I was like, I need to find that shirt, brother. And
I guarantee you they make that.
Yeah,
I guarantee you they make that.
I was like, they make all these other fucking horror shirts. They have to make that one. I'm going to try to find that one somewhere out here. But I thought that was a really good idea, promoting your gimmicks in your movie. All right. Mm-hmm. So now the uncle now says, and I quote, if I may, we need to find some, we need a liver. No, sorry. Let me start over. The uncle says, I just couldn't believe this. The uncle says that we need lungs and livers from 2 sluts. So we need to find 2 sluts and get their lungs and livers. Only sluts. We don't need these nice girls. We need the sluts, brother.
No, they have to be sluts.
Okay.
They have to be sluts.
All right. So Mike's giving out some more food. Connie's there now. All right. And then she wants to, basically Connie's there and she meets Mike, and Mike wants her to come out to George's wrestling match. So this is the first time we're hearing George is going to have a wrestling match, and he's going to have a wrestling match against little Jimmy Hitler.
Yeah. The top heel.
All right. And then Connie's like, I don't really want to go. I don't think my dad will let me go and stuff like that. And then Mike does his hypnotize shit on her, and she basically agrees to go. Okay. So we do have so now Vitamin C tells Mikey that, hey, see that guy over there? That's Stan C, that Mr. Veggie. He's over here at your place and stuff. All right. And then while this is happening, George gets a stop in from the federal inspector, the food inspector guy. And George's like, okay, I'll take you back to he basically takes him back into the room, and then he comes out with, hey, I got 2 specials, which was a hand, and then they cooked them. I guess the special this time was a hand, and it would be fingers. So I guess it was like hand fingers. Veggie
hand fingers, exactly.
Veggie human hand fingers. It was the special. All right, so then so the uncle is now telling them they need many more ingredients for this feast. All right, and he needs them to go get those 2 bitches from earlier. That's a quote from our uncle, Newton.
Yeah.
All right. So somehow the uncle calls them or something. I'm not really sure what's going on. I guess he finds out where they are. All right. So Mikey says that they got work to do. Uncle calls them both idiots. Okay. So then we get a weird scene of George running over some fat biker to the Moon Bop song.
Right.
Like, it took forever,
Randomly.
and I did not know why this is happening. This guy wasn't one of the bitches. I guess they need some of his fat biker stuff or something. I have no idea.
I guess so. Yeah,
Maybe
it had
they're-
nothing really to do with the plot, though.
Maybe they were running him over. Maybe they can. Maybe they see a dead biker that think he's one of the cannibal bikers. I don't know.
Maybe.
So now we get a fun scene. I love this scene. I thought this is pretty funny. So we have this guy. His name is Buzz. All right, and he's trying to go fuck one of the girls that was one of the sluts that the uncle was talking about in the bar, the black-haired one. All right, and the girl's like, "Oh, it's about to rain, and I'm worried about that cannibal biker gang." All right. Oh no, she's like, "I'm worried about that cannibal biker gang who only kills vegetarians, and I'm a vegetarian." And then the Buzz guy's like, "Listen, all right, bro, this is a great line. This is a great fucking line right here." I was like cracking up my ass. And I was like, God, that's smooth. And he said, after she said all that, about being worried about the cannibal bikers and her being a vegetarian, and she feels like she's like, going to be caught by one of these guys. Our boy Buzz is like, the only one that's going to chop you up. No, okay, hold on. The only one that's going to chop up your sweet meat is me.
Ooh,
oh,
yeah.
Fuck, that's a good line. God,
that's a good line.
The only one who's going to chop up your sweet meat. Yes. All right, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that'll do me." So our girl gets butt ass naked. All right, I'm talking about bush and everything. Okay, and then George out of nowhere just comes out and knocks out the guy. Okay, so this girl who's fully naked. I'm talking about Quigley naked from what's it called? Return of the Living Dead style naked. She's that naked.
Yeah.
All right. She beats and whoops up George's ass. She beats his ass naked.
That was great.
I thought that was hilarious.
I saw that. I love that scene. And that was all in Bronson Caves, too, because they even talk about how they're going to go to Bronson Cave.
Yeah, Bronson Caves.
Which is a kind of a famous filming location in Hollywood. I visited it there when I was there. Nice. But yeah, so they're inside Bronson Cave, and then she beats the shit out of George naked. Yeah, which is great.
Just think, man.
That was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah, just think, you visited a place where you had this naked girl beat up George.
Exactly. Yeah.
So after she's done beating his ass, she goes on checks on Buzz, but then a rock falls on her head and she dies. All right. And then we're back at the club, and then Mikey is tasked to find the other slut. All right. But all he has to do is sweet talk her. Okay. So now George is pissed off at the girl. See, he already chopped her up and got her body parts, but he's kicking her body parts around because he got beat up by her. All right.
Yeah.
So Mike brings the other girl back to the diner, and he's all like, "I got a big surprise for you." And she's like, "Oh yeah, a big one?" He's like, "Yeah, well, not that, but I got another big surprise for you."
Not that one.
All right. So now we see the cops. They go to the cave. All right. I put in my notes that dude that tried to fuck her, Buzz, is freaking out. Said, I didn't know this was going to happen. I was just super horny.
Wow.
He's like, I didn't see the guy.
Who would have thought?
I didn't see the guy anywhere. All right. And then now Matt's back. Then we get a cutscene with Matt. Oh, no, Matt. Sorry. Matt, the police. He's back. Mark's back. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And he is back, and he is sick and stuff. He's like saying all this, this sick, who could do this? Some sick culted killers and shit like that. Mm-hmm. All right. The Chief Miller thinks it's still a biker gang. All right. And Chief wants them to go back on the veggie angle. He wants them to, keep going to veggie diners and see if they can stoke it out and see if we can find these cannibal gangs. But Mark and Jackson are trying to convince him that, hey, it's not this veggie gang. It's actually some cult that we're studying up on. But the Chief Miller, he doesn't want to hear that. He wants them to go back on the gang, okay, or else he's gonna fire them and put them out somewhere else.
Exactly.
All right. So now, Mark decides, hey, we should split up. Maybe I'll go back to the, you go back to the diner and I'll go check on the guy. They basically bring up that there's this cop, the last cop to kill a known member of this gang. Mm-hmm. The ritual cult gang, the Luminaries or whatever you were saying. The last guy to do that was obviously Uncle Newton. Okay, but they want to go find the cop who shot him. All right, so that's what Matt's gonna do, and they want Jackson also to keep on the veggie train of veggie restaurants. All right.
Yeah.
So now,
yeah.
And then of course Matt shoots his gun, or Mark shoots his gun. All right, and then it's supposed to be funny. So now the uncle, they need to suck up all the blood, because they need to get as much blood for the blood buffet. So they're getting that from one of the sluts that Mike killed. George is back. He got the lung and liver from his slut. Okay. And now they need to prepare for the big party. They need to prepare more for the big feast because they got all their ingredients now. Okay. And so now George is getting prepared, and he's also happy to wrestle the Hitler. The little Jimmy Hitler.
Little Jimmy Hitler, yeah.
So now, while Mikey and George leave, that's when Stan, he goes to the diner because he needs to get the recipe, and his doll tells him it's not a good idea, but he goes in there anyway. So now Mike goes back to the club where he got a lot of his victims from, and he tells the club owners they want to have a big party there for this big feast and everything. And he if I could do this, I will bring the crowd and everything, and you guys can pass out free drugs, and I'll supply all the drugs for you to pass out. And the club owner's like, hell yeah, let's do this. Maybe that's how the original club of our boy car got shut down. Maybe he's passing
out free drugs.
Yeah,
maybe.
Free drugs.
Yeah, maybe.
Trying to get SHEETAR to come back in real life and shoot life, brother. All right.
Sure.
So they said, hey, we will be here around midnight, but the first thing we gotta go is the wrestling match to go watch George wrestle. And they're like, okay. All right, so that's the plan. We're gonna have George wrestle first, and then they're gonna head out to the sacrifice stuff. All right, so now Mark is talking about the uncle. Okay. So Matt is now talking to the cop. Okay, who Mark is talking to the cop who originally killed Newton, okay, or the uncle. All right, and every time he would bring up the name Newton, the girl that was hanging on the cop's shoulder would freak out. She would start screaming and shit. Okay, but then the cop goes over the whole story of how he caught him. So that's why he caught him at the house. He came out with the meat cleaver and stuff. They shot him down to death. And then the cop said he stared into his eyes, and he said, one day I'm going to come back, and I'm going to solely go after your daughter, and she's going to pay for your sins. And of course, the cop's daughter just so happens to be Connie, who is a virgin that they want for the movie. So that's how we get that all explained in this over here. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then the cop says, oh, whoever they are, they can't really be part of this Montauk clan or whatever. All right. And then Mark said, well, they took his brain. The cop's like, oh, they took his brain. So now it's the time. Now it's the time for our big wrestling match. We have George, who he has Lucy Liu. Okay. He was hailed to be a cult member. And he's facing off against the savage champion, little Jimmy Hitler. All right? So they wrestle this match. Jimmy basically beat his ass like a squash. Okay? For the heat. So Hitler was getting him on for the heat. Jimmy had a little bit of George had a little bit of a comeback. But then he got cut off by more of the Hitler's heat on there. Until Mikey did not like this. So he took a slingshot and he distracted. Bro, they even have distraction in horror movies. We had that Mikey did the distraction to the heel, and then Louis came up behind him, took him down, did a headbutt on him, and then went for the. It looked like he was going for the toe hold submission, Terry Funk's toe hold submission, but then from that he bit his leg. And then while he bit his leg, all the blood from the leg went all over Connie, who's there in attendance. All right. So Connie
Wow,
gets out of there.
That was great.
Yeah, so that wrestling match is actually pretty fun, and the little Jimmy Hitler actually looked like he actually looked like a wrestler, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I really feel like that the Dukey Flyswatter understands wrestling, which is why I thought he was a wrestling fan.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so basically now Connie wants to leave because she didn't want all this blood and shit all over her and stuff, and Mike tries to hypnotize her, but she still wants to leave, and he's like, oh, fuck this, so he just knocks her out, and he takes her away. All right. So while this is all happening, Jackson now gets a call from Mark, and then Mark tells her all about the cop meeting and everything, and says like, "Hey, we should probably get off the veggie case and let's go check out. Can you check out if Newtuck has any living relatives? Because we a lot of the cult stuff we're finding about, the ritual stuff that we're finding about is all from his name." So she wants to do that. And then while this is all happening, while like Mark is on the phone talking to her, this is when Mikey and George show up, and George putting her tongue at her and moons her. All right. Do you remember
that was great? That was hilarious.
Do you remember the mooning there, Alison? All right.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, that was fantastic.
All right, and then now Jackson's kind of pissed off, and she's like, well, and then she's trying to put 2 to 2 together, and she was like, okay, the restaurant is called Tootin, and this guy's named Newton. So she's putting 2 to 2 together. And she's like, hey, meet me at. She tells Mark on the phone, who's trying to like flirt with her. She tells Mark, hey, meet me at this that diner. Okay.
Right.
So now, in the diner, Mikey and George now get Connie ready for the SHEETAR ritual. They start singing out their passages, and now they notice that their uncle is missing. There's no uncle there. All right? And they're saying somebody broke in and stole him. And then Mike figures out, wait a minute, it's probably that Stan guy, because I remember that Stan guy at one of my recipes, so he probably came here and stole our uncle. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now George is about to get out of there, get to the front door, and then Jackson stops him. All right? And she says, it's not nice to moon an officer. All right? And she's going to take him in. But then Mike comes up right next to her and knocks her out. All right. And then they tie her up in the diner. Okay. So now Stan, we can see Stan talking to the Uncle Jar. And he wants to do the secret recipe. And the uncle is like saying, you can't do the recipe correctly because you're not a priest of our cult. All right. And he's all like, you're going to give me this recipe or I'm going to pour your shit down the drain. Like he's going to pour all his head and his stuff down the drain and everything. He's like, okay, well, you need 3 pints of virgin blood. He's like, okay, 3 pints of virgin blood. And then you hear in the background, 3 eggs. And this is when Mike and George come in. Mike and George stab Stan in the shoulder. Okay. And then start taunting him for a little bit. George grabs the head or the jar head. He throws him at Mike and George. They catch him. Stan tries to get out of there. They go around to the side. He tries to leave. They chop off his hand. Blood's everywhere. Then they let Stan get into his car. Right when he gets his good hand on the steering wheel, they chop off that hand super easy. And then we have a whole scene of Stan driving, saying funny jokes while the blood's coming out of his hand and the windshield and shit. And then he crashes. Comedy. It's great shit.
Comedy.
It's cool. I like the blood in there. You know what I mean? It's nice.
Oh, that was good. Oh, that looked good.
All right, so now they take now they go back. So now we see that Mark comes. We see a knife basically come near Jackson. It cuts off her belt, and then it cuts down her shirt. She wakes up freaking out, and it was just Mark saying, "Hey, I was just trying to give you some breathing room and stuff." And then Jackson's like, "Whatever." Now we know who the killers are, and if they get him, and she said, like, "I will give you the biggest apology that I've ever gave a white man before." Okay. So now we have Mikey, George, the uncle, and Connie. They're all going to the SHEETAR's ritual party. And George actually puts the brain and the eyes into the SHEETAR mummified Bride of Frankenstein creature. Okay. So now we're at the party, which I believe this is like probably like, you know, Haunted Garage is very similar. I would say they would put similar shows on, you know?
Yes.
We the main singer basically looks like a big Elvis. He had that big Elvis hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like in this big Elvis style suit and stuff. And he's like doing shit with his cock, giving out his cock to women. And then behind him is a bunch of Hitler guitarist. Fucking weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Elvis and the Hitlers. Yes.
Yeah. So now they're passing out drugs everywhere. Not everybody's having the drugs, but a lot of people are eating the drugs and stuff. The club owner's like, oh shit, we need more drugs. Where are they? So Mikey and George show up. They go straight to do their ritual. All right. We have one guy who's kind of dressed up like Frankenstein, starting not to feeling well. So he turns into a zombie cannibal or a cannibal. I guess he turns into a cannibal. So I guess these drugs made you, like, after the ritual starts going on, it makes you turn into a cannibal. Okay. So they get like the bucket of blood and hands out with a couple of spoons and forks. All right. So now Mark and Jackson, they are heading up to the club. Mark said he's hungry. All right. Jackson sees the back entrance of the club, says she's going to come there, and tells Mark to call up for backup. All right. And Mark's like, don't go in there, but she goes in there anyway. All right. We have the Hitler guitars players doing their thing. All right. So all the people who took the drugs are turning into cannibals. All right. They're about to do some more rituals on Connie. Okay. They're telling SHEETAR to awaken. Awaken, SHEETAR. Do you want SHEETAR to be awakened?
At this point in the movie, I do. Yes, I can't wait to see what happens.
All right. So now Jackson, like the bouncer tries to not let Jackson in, saying, "Oh, there's a bunch of crazy killers that come in here all the time," and she basically just points a gun at him and tells him to go fuck off. All right. So they're waiting for SHEETAR to come awake. SHEETAR finally awakes. Mike says, "Here's your first meal, Connie." SHEETAR is about to eat Connie, but then Jackson comes in. She shoots Mike and kills him and breaks it up. Then George starts to being all pissy, saying, "Oh, you killed my brother. You killed my brother." All right, sorry, hold on. The first thing that happened was she just breaks it up. Jackson does, okay? And then all these zombies come and get it. Mike tells SHEETAR to use her Jupiter powers on everybody.
Right.
Which is 1980s blue lightning. Radiant powers.
Yes.
So one guy complains about his ears and the music, and then lightning goes through his ears, so he dies. And then we have the SHEETAR using the 80s blue lightning to kill a guitarist and to kill the main singer.
Yes.
Of the band. Okay.
The Elvis guy, yeah.
So now this is the point where Mark and Jackson, they start blowing up a bunch of I call them zombies, but they could be cannibals too. All right. So now Mike is trying to put Connie's head into the SHEETAR, so the SHEETAR can have its first meal. But before Mike could do this is the part that I said earlier. This is when Mark actually shoots Mike, and then Mike dies. Okay. So now George is all pissed off because he realized that his brother is dead. So now George goes after Mark, and they start fighting a little bit. And George is about to put Mark's head into the SHEETAR teeth stomach. Okay, until Jackson interrupts, and she kicks George, and then George's head goes into the SHEETAR stomach. Okay. And so now when George's head goes into the SHEETAR stomach, I guess George wasn't a virgin. So the SHEETAR and him explode. Okay. And then we cut. Now we have Chief Miller ask if Mark and Jackson are okay. They said okay, and Mark said he's good for a white boy. And then Jackson says, "I'm gonna buy you I'm gonna buy you the best hospital coffee you can get."
The best hospital coffee you can get. Hilarious.
So Chief looks at all the dead party people. All right. We see two like nurses or ambulance nurses dragging away a body, and then we see like this red dress girl walking. We have this blonde dude bro. All right, he wants her to come. He's begging. Like this acting was basically like, hey, go in here and try to like just flirt with her, be like an obnoxious dude. He's like, hey baby, come in here. All right, come in here right now. He puts up the door open, and this guy's lying, bro. This guy almost had as good of a line as Buzz did, but this blonde guy line was pretty great. He's all like, oh. So the girl gets into his car, right? He's like, hey, baby, come home with me. I want you to come home with me tonight. Just come in my car. I want you to hang out with me, but baby, come on in. Opens up the door. Girl comes in. And he goes like, he's like, I'm so hot and bothered and horny right now. I'm so hot and bothered and horny right now. Brother,
yeah,
they didn't give a fuck.
That works every time.
They didn't give a fuck in the 80s. All right? It's like, and I like this part too. He's like, hey, baby, before I put my big sausage in you, what do they call you? All right, and then they turn around, and of course, it's SHEETAR, because we see the dress girl. She says they call me SHEETAR, and she sees like the things and everything.
She still got the teeth. And then the strange thing about this was they still drove away together. Like
they drove away.
A deal breaker for him.
No, bro.
Like he didn't care. The fangs was not a deal breaker for him at all.
He said he's hot and bothered and horny. And he wants to put the big sausage in her. He doesn't care if she has some weird teeth or not, brother. He's ready to go.
No. Yeah, I thought that was weird. Like she had this big fang teeth, and he was like, I can live with that.
Yeah. So, and they drive on off, and that ends the horror comedy Blood Diner. I thought it was pretty fun for what it was.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. This movie is a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Not something I watch all the time, but I did like it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like one of those like fun movies that's also like kind of like it's like it's a fun movie, and there's like a lot of like quirkiness behind it, but it's also pretty shocking of some of the stuff you see. Like, you know, you had all this like very rare niche stuff in there that's like kind of like wow.
Yes.
So
yeah,
pretty fun stuff, I would say. So, but everybody, thanks for joining us. This has been a fun month talking my picks for my birthday month, talking these 1980s movies that just have blood on their title. All right, I thought we did some pretty fun ones on here. We did some. I say most of the movies were pretty fun, except for maybe the Blood Lake. That one was kind of boring. But then other than that, I thought these ones were pretty fun. So
yeah, I like the John Saxon one a lot. That was really good.
Yeah, Blood Beach.
Yes.
Blood Tide was one of my favorites. That's probably one of my favorite reviews we've done like ever. So
Blood Tide was good too. That was a good show. Yeah, that was fun.
But everybody, the retro blood train keeps rolling, because we are going to enter a new month, a summer month of June. All right, and we're going to do a couple things special in June. All right, so the first things we're going to do is in June we are going to start a whole new brand month, talking all about little monster creatures. All right, actually, hold on, we were doing
it's not. It's aliens.
It's aliens. My bad. Let me start over. So we are going to start over a whole new month here in the month of June 2025, talking It Came from Outer Space Part 2 here on the Retro Blood.
We did this a year or so ago, right?
Yes. So that's when we did one of my other favorite reviews that we did. We didn't video at the time, but we did The Blob during that one.
The Blob, yes.
So I'll post a couple of those and stuff. Yes, you can find those in the archives. You can find them on the YouTube, and you can find it on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Radio, Amazon, everywhere you can get your podcast from. You can find the Retro Blood. But we'll be coming back next week with It Came from Outer Space Part 2, and we're gonna start off with Night Beast.
Yeah, this is gonna be great. This is a movie I've wanted to do for a while.
Me too.
I believe it's on Tubi. If anybody wants to watch it before we do the show. But yeah, this is a movie I want to do for a while. So
it might also be on Peacock too. All right, because I swear I might have saw them on the Peacock as well too. But Night Beast is going to be the next one. But that's not it. All right.
No.
That's it for
special month.
The Retro Blood, is doing It Came from Outer Space. But our sister podcast, our alternative podcast that we actually haven't done a live video for yet, is going to be Lights Out. All right.
Lights Out.
So everybody,
we haven't done one of these in a while.
We haven't done it in a while. So everybody who's not familiar, everybody's brand new to our channel. Lights Out is basically our sister podcast where me and Alison get out of the 80s and we talk about different subjects. We talk about movies from the 70s, movies from the 2000s, maybe some sequels from movies that didn't come out in the 80s. We talk about those on Lights Out. It's a little different format. We don't really talk about, pro wrestling or metal music on there. We just kind of just free shot our thoughts about the movie. We also do a very
format.
Yeah, we also do a very fun Lights Out in the month of October where we do Battle of the Halloween Havocs. And then sometimes we'll talk about some pro wrestling stuff on the Lights Out as well too. So it's kind of like that podcast is more specially designed for just that subject only. All right. So the one we're doing for June, which is really fun, and it's also going to lead us into July, is we are coming back here June 20th. All right. And we are going to talk about the 50-year anniversary of one of our favorite movies and one of the most famous horror movies of all time, Jaws.
Yes, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I watch it every 4th of July. Yep. So this is going to be great. They're releasing a 4K 50th anniversary version, which I'm sure I will buy that too because I bought this movie like 6 times now.
Yep.
But yeah, this is it's going to be great. I cannot wait to talk about this movie.
Jaws, one of the most copied movies in horror movie history, and also one of the most famous one in horror movie history, just for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's probably I wouldn't even say that just in horror movie. I would say in like cinema, Jaws is probably one of the most popular movies in movie history.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. It changed the way movies were made, so we will talk about that for sure. So,
and that will lead us into July. All right, and we're gonna do a very special month in July, which y'all can kind of figure out.
Some we've never done before. It's a new theme.
Yeah, it's gonna be very fun. So everybody join us here. But everybody, thanks for joining us for this month of May, talking all these blood movies. I thought it was pretty fun. And join us next week, next week and next month because It Came from Outer Space last year was one of my all-time favorite month to review movies. All right, and then this year I think we have a pretty good collection of movies we're going to talk about. So we're going to start with Night Beast, but then next week we'll tell you the full schedule. All right.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. But Alison, what Napalm Death song should we get on out of here with?
I'm assuming you don't want to play You Suffer.
Well, I mean, we could. It might be a second, but
man, let's do Instinct of Survival.
Okay, there you go. A little Instinct of Survival. We had a couple of that on here. Yeah. You know what I mean? Connie was trying to survive, and everybody's trying to survive, but our rich little SHEETAR was taken all over, and everything is kind of hard to get her. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So they're trying to get some instinct to survive. All right. And I think after this song plays, because I did say we're gonna play a song from Haunted Garage, I think this song after this we're gonna do She Freak, because I bet you that that SHEETAR is definitely a she freak. Just ask our boy in the red car. All right. All right, everybody. Yes. James, Kline, J.H. Alison. We'll see you here next week on the Retro Blood.
See you guys.